We're also seeing a 32% dip in the levels of foreign direct investment coming to India. All our biggest groups are increasingly sending their capital abroad. And Union Home Minister P. Chidambaram has gone to the extent of saying that there is a governance and ethical deficit that this government suffers from. Those are sweeping statements, sir, coming from one of the top ministers of this government.
I think, right from the Prime Minister to everybody has acknowledged that these are serious issues which have to be addressed. So nobody is trying to undermine the current issues whichever are, engaging the country. But on the other side, to say that India, just because one quarter figures of industrial production or some parameter is being slightly, on the lower side, does not mean that everything is fundamentally wrong. That's the point I was making, that if you look at India in totality, these are a series of initiatives over the years which have led to India where it is today. And I would say any government which has been in power for almost now 7 years, therefore, the credit of whatever has happened cannot be taken away from the government. Ultimately, government works in continuity. You can't get up every morning and say that this is a new measure which is announced to kickstart or further fuel the economy. So if you look at the governance issue and you look at the growth story issue, it has to be judged over a period of 7 years. If you're trying to narrow it down to 3 months, 6 months or a year, I think that would be unfair.
Professor Chaudhary, the minister making the point, India is not growing because the government is not functioning. It's growing because the government has done certain things right. And that the picture that is being painted is more dismal than ground reality. Would you concede that?
There are a lot of issues. When we talk about the growth story, whom are we talking about? If you're talking about the top 2% or top 5%, there is a growth story which is there for the world to see, and we are really hyping it up. But if we are talking about the rest of 95%, and I'm not talking about 80% or 40%, I'm talking about rest of 95%, which is living at less than $10 a day, and out of which about 40% lives at less than $2 a day, or 45%. If you're talking about that, where functional literacy is less than 30%, where people dying below the age of something like 40 is about 17%, where unemployment is rampant, where people are going to bed without food in their stomach, if you're talking about that, it's only been growing. It's not been coming down. So which story are we talking about? And which story are we trying to sell? If we're trying to sell that polished, shiny story of 5%, then also there is a problem. The industry today, and my friends are here from the industry today is really looking at the first opportunity of taking their money outside this country, investing outside, not bringing back the returns from investment back to India. So there is, of course, a huge problem. We can't just put it under the carpet.
Dr. Mitra, FDI levels into India coming down by a third. We're seeing Indian capital going abroad, and yet the minister says the picture is not as bad as is being made out to be. Where do you stand?
No, I think its first point is growth. Economy is judged by the growth rate. Now, prediction was it'll grow at 7%. We had projected 8.5%. We are looking at 8.6%. Perhaps it will be useful to know that IMF had projected over 9%. So first comes first. Is growth good? Now the second issue is, has poverty come down? Now all figures indicate that over the period of liberalization, those below the poverty line, numbers have significantly fallen. Number of entrepreneurs in India today, in the last count, is about 55 million entrepreneurs. So there's ground level tremendous synergy in this process. You talk of fiscal deficit. By the way, fiscal deficit is expected to be 5.5%. What is the fiscal deficit in the United States? Maybe in the range of 10-11% because of the meltdown. We didn't go there. Now, even last year, it was 6.7%. So there is a decline in the fiscal deficit, which we hope will slowly move towards the 4%. It is important to maintain that vibration, that we are growing. We will have to increase a concentric circle of growth, which widens its process out because of the energy of the corporate.